Well, welcome everyone to the June 2022 edition of Cabaret Conversations through the 92nd Street Y School of Music. I am, as always, your host, Michael Kirk Lane. I am so thrilled to be starting off year 3 of Cabaret Conversations with our guest this evening. He is, of course, a multi-award-winning cabaret performer and director, winning his first Bistro Award in 1987. He now has 6 of those, and his first Mac Award in 1988. He now also has 6 of those. He's also a recipient of the Mabel Mercer Foundation Donald Smith Award, and he has 5 amazing albums out, including his newly released I Know Things Now, My Life in Sondheim's Words. Please welcome to Cabaret Conversations, a performer I have long admired and who I now am thrilled to be able to call a colleague and friend, Mr. Jeff Harnar.
Hi, Michael.
Hi, Jeff. How are you?
I'm very well. I'm delighted to be here. Delighted to see you. Because usually when I see you, it means I'm doing a show or something exciting. You're always. I think you've seen me perform more than anyone except Phyllis Kinsley.
Well, it's always a joy to watch you, darling. So I am thrilled. It's always a masterclass to get to watch you perform. But let's start at the beginning. I've heard it's a very good place to start. How did Jeff Harnar, California-born Jeff, find his way to New York City and the world of cabaret?
Oh, wow. Let me try and do a very short version of this. I was born in the wrong Manhattan. I was born in Manhattan Beach, California, and my dad worked for Ford Motor Company, and so we moved 5 times while I was growing up. So I don't even remember living in California. We moved to Michigan, then to Connecticut. The great thing about being in Connecticut was my dad was a madman. He worked, in PR for Ford. In 1965, we moved here for the World's Fair. So that was a very exciting way for me to get my first taste of New York City. And it was also where I got my first taste of Broadway shows. And a Broadway show. I saw The Happy Time with Robert Goulet and David Wayne and a cast full of 9-year-olds, which is how old I was. And I just fell in love with the idea of performing. Then we moved to Chicago, and that's where my mom saw that I loved theater. So she got the cast album of The Music Man because there was a production of The Music Man being cast. And I got the part of the little boy, Winthrop, with the lisp. And from that, I got my union cards. There was a talent agent there from Chicago who, I had all my union cards when I was 10. And I had this really flourishing career as a voice soprano. And then it's been hard work ever since I became a baritone. So, but that's sort of how it began. And the interesting thing about cabaret is, so I fell in love with the voice of Barbara Cook as a 9-year-old. And as a high school student, her album As of Today came out. And I was just astonished at the physical transformation, because on the back of the album, she is standing in a doorway. And, she just was no longer this pencil thin ingenue. And then when I played the album, I loved hearing that voice. It was as fulfilling to me as listening to a cast album, but it was all one artist. And I figured out right away that this man, Wally Harper, was the genius who took songs that I knew and made them sound like I had never heard before. So that she was my first real conduit of seeing that you could love musical theater and then morph into something else that's its own art form. And I made it my mission that as soon as I got to New York City, I would see her. I have had a subscription to the New Yorker since I was 16. And starting at 16, I saw Reno Sweeney, Barbara Cook, Thursday through Saturday. It was $7 cover. I just couldn't wait. And that's the first thing I did when I got here. I spent a New Year's Eve at Reno Sweeney's listening to her sing Ice Cream. And she really was the siren song of what the world of cabaret could be.
Were there
that plus the fact that I saw Liza with a Z when that was when I was 12. That was on TV, and seeing Concert Liza that was the first time I'd ever seen anyone do anything like that,
Mm.
where again, one person was an entire show. So that always was in my head, that there was some way to do something theatrically satisfying as a solo artist with music that I loved.
When was your first solo show?
It was June 13th, 1983 at Paulson's. Then then Steve McGraw's, then now the Triad. And it was with Alex Rybeck and, who I'm still with today, 39 years later. And I wanted a Wally Harper, and I found one my first time at bat. And really, it was, and I think Meg Flather is watching today. She was there that night. I mean, I had the coveted 11 o'clock Monday night slot at Paulson's, and somehow I got 50 people there, paying a $5 cover to see me do, 13 of my favorite audition songs. I really didn't quite know what I was doing, but Alex tried to take the best care of me that he could. But I just loved it, and I loved him, and I just always kept coming back for more.
Well, I've been tipped off to ask you this early in the interview about an early performance spot of yours. Tell us about Mrs. J's Sacred Cow.
The place where the girls sing to you. And I was one of the girls. What can I say? It's hard to hand out a menu that says the place where the girls sing to you. But yeah, she had, I knew that was a place where people could work as a waiter and sing. And so I started working there in 1986, 7, 8, I think were the years I was there, or 7, 8, 9. And, the thing that was great about Mrs. J's was, first of all, you work with multiple musical directors. So it was important to get your charts in place so that you could, throw them in front of different pianists, different nights of the week. And the challenge of getting diners to stop eating and pay attention. And also, everyone there was extraordinarily talented. They all either had Broadway credits or went on to have Broadway credits. And of course, that's where I met Shauna Hicks, who is the Judy Garland in my Mickey and Judy show. And she went on to star on Broadway at Blood Brothers and the National Tour of How to Succeed. And I'm now the godfather to her son. So a lot of good stuff came out of Mrs. J's Sacred Cow, where they paid us $11.10 a night. That was our shift pay. It's outrageous.
With tips, I hope. With tips.
Oh no, we got to keep the tips.
Good.
It's
What do you feel like you learned the most in those years as a singing waiter? I know that for me, as I started in the cabaret world, working the piano bar at Mama's is where I honed so much of what I now do in engaging with an audience or working with multiple music directors. What was the biggest takeaway for you from that era?
Well, Shauna and I came up with an interesting thing. I'm going to call it rupture, for lack of a better word. What we would do is we had a couple of duets that we liked to do, and she would be across the dining room waiting on a table, and I'd be at my table, and I would start saying to my guests, look at her over there flirting with the guys. Look at that. Can you believe that? And she'd be flirting with the guys, and then we would get the conversation going so that we're shouting back and forth at each other across the diners, and pretty soon people got really quiet to see what was going on, and then we would break into Once in a Blue Moon from Little Mary Sunshine. But just that idea of, how are you going to rupture what's happening and grab people's attention was a really good learning tool. It's why singing at piano bars is one of my least favorite things to do, because I don't want to be in the audience talking while someone's performing. I just am so sensitive to that. And to create that rupture and command attention in a place where people haven't bought a ticket to see you is very, very challenging, which would segue to my work on cruise ships, which is the greatest takeaway I got from working on cruise ships, is performing for audiences who did not buy a ticket to see you and are not predisposed to sit in their seats. You are one more buffet. They can take 2 songs and then decide they're out of there. So to command an audience that you know, didn't buy a ticket to see you is something that a kind of seasoning, a really great vibe, like 15, 16 years of doing that. And I'm so grateful for that kind of, getting up there. And that's working with 6-piece band, 7-piece band, 9-piece band on the QE2. It's 17-piece band on, Royal Caribbean. That is the task of meeting an entire band on the day of your show. You get 90 minutes to run down your charts, and then you do the show twice that night. Then you're a passenger the rest of the time you're out there. I mean, it's a dream job except for that one day. And you've got the. So yeah, I learned a lot about. I learned a lot doing all of that. That's Andrea Marcovici once saw me years later after doing cruise work, and she said, "That's the best thing that ever happened to you." I mean, you can just go out on a stage and just be at home. And it's tough for cabaret singers now who get to do this show once in a month or once every 3 months. It's very hard. Sandra Lee, my director, says it's heartbreaking to see people get primed up like an athlete to have this night, and then there's no next night. And as Condon and Green said to me, the greatest gift we wish for you is to do 7 or 8 shows a week, because that's the only way to learn how to play an audience and to play your material. Mm-hmm. So I was very lucky when I started in cabaret. There were still rooms like the Algonquin and the Ballroom and the Firebird Cafe where I got to do 7 shows a week for a month. I mean, that just seems outrageous now. But it was,
you were part of the scene as that transition was happening from the guaranteed bookings. You're there for a couple of weeks doing every night to the world we're in now. How do you think that transition has changed the art form?
Well, now I'm just going to use my word rupture again. I mean, now the challenge is for all the people who are like myself, who are creating shows, is how do you have an idea, like Meg Flather, who's watching, got this idea to sing Rodgers and Hammerstein, and not change the gender of any of the songs. I mean, it's how do you do something that's going to command attention, and so that maybe you will get a level of notice. It's very hard right now because there are so many talented people. When I started in cabaret, Broadway people, well, when I started in cruise ships, it's the last thing Broadway people wanted to do. That was like, you have hit the bottom if you're playing the cruise ship. Now they've all figured out you make a Broadway salary, a 1-week Broadway salary for singing one night in a week on a cruise ship, and you get to travel and see the world and kind of be a big fish in a little pond. It's a wonderful, wonderful job. I don't even know where I'm going with that thought. But
we have seen, we have seen in the last few years, kind of starting the last couple of years pre-COVID and since, a return of where we are getting more Broadway folks into the cabaret world, where they're doing their show. Absolutely. And then on their day off, on Monday, they might do a show at 54 or at the Beachman, and on their day off, do their own work. Do you think that's a boon for the art form?
I do, except I'm just, with that, without the fear of inciting wrath. I love the people who dedicate themselves to singing in intimate rooms. It's a very special talent to come up on a stage without a fourth wall and sing into the eyes of your audience and really make them know that they are your scene partner. The show is not complete without them. There's no fourth wall there. Broadway singers, in my limited experience of seeing a lot of their shows, aren't particularly adept at that. They can do that magical thing of becoming another person and establishing the fourth wall, and certainly vocally there's a stamina to Broadway singing that I don't have. But I am very particular about singers who cultivate that art form of really knowing how to cast a spell and take you on a journey. And it's not just about singing 10 of your favorite songs. And it's not just about saying, I'm going to call my show Sinatra and just, it really is about having a very specific point of view. And yeah, and I know there are Broadway singers who do it wonderfully, so I'm generalizing. But I
it's a
just know
skill.
so many of us in Cabaret who do it beautifully.
It's a skill set that so many of them haven't honed yet. There are some who do it brilliantly. But even when Chita Rivera was on the show, she talked about when John Cantor made her do her first cabaret act and how scared she was to not have a character to hide behind.
Yes.
And to not have a chorus full of dancers behind her.
Elaine Page came to see was in my audience one time for a show, and she came back and she just said, "What you do astonishes me. I could never do it. I could never ever look into the eyes of my audience," which is very. And an opera singer was in my audience once and came back and she said, "An opera singer doesn't sing as much in an entire opera as a cabaret singer does in that hour. There's no role that demands that. I mean, not that we're singing that, fortitude, but it was interesting. So there's a lot to be said for what we do."
Well, let's talk more about that. As someone who is a trained actor and musical theater performer, as you made the transition fully into cabaret, where you wanted to be, from the siren song of Barbara Cook, what do you think makes this art form as unique as it is?
Well, the director I'm working with right now, Sandra Lee,
who's in the room.
Was in the room. Thank God. Hello, Sandra. Her mantra is tell the truth, state the facts. There's a wonderful lyric in one of my songs, my Sondheim show. It's from the song Now You Know. I don't know what Sondheim meant when he wrote it, but the lyric is put your dimple down. And that's been Sandra's mission with me, is to try and rip through the ingratiating thing and just really trust that I plus great lyrics am enough. And that's what I think makes a great cabaret singer. I mean, you know when you're in the company of an oracle, when somebody is channeling something that is allowing the human heart to have a catharsis, a purge, a joy and exhilaration, to escape the world, to go where they didn't even know they needed to go. It's a very, very special art.
As you were starting out, who were the performers you looked to, or who were your mentors or teachers in the art form?
Well, gosh, I was a Karen Mason fan right away, because she was someone who had a Wally Harper. She had Brian Lasser, and I'd never heard anyone who. Oh, this is another word I love about cabaret singers. They're attainable. I mean, they're attainable. You can stand outside the door after the show and meet them. And that should be the illusion of the show, is that they're attainable. And Karen Mason was attainable and accessible. And she inspired both Alex and me enormously. And Brian was one of my early mentors. He directed a whole show for me and did all the arrangements early on that really changed my life. He was the first person who said, well, so I was not even 30 at the time, but he said cabaret traditionally is an older woman taking the audience through the journey of her life lessons and the wisdom that she's learned. You're the opposite. You're a young man starting out. So let's do a show that's all firsts. First love, first starting out, first heartbreak, first picking yourself up again. And that gave me a wonderful hook to start with. So Brian, Karen, I would not be here had I not taken Sarah Louise Lazarus' singing class. I was working with Alex a couple of years, and I asked him what should I be doing, and he said, I play for this woman, and I play a lot of classes, but I have never seen anyone work with singers the way she does, where the transformations are miraculous and for everyone to see. So I took her class, and that changed my life. She saw something in me that I didn't see. There's another part of my journey that isn't really relevant, but I have struggled with different addictions all my life. And I finally was able to get sober from them 11 years ago. But Sarah was somebody who, in the midst of a very challenging time in my life, held up a mirror and gave me a look at what could possibly really be in there. She's the one who said to me, the bar is your own. It's not, I'm going to sing I've Got You Under My Skin and try to as well as Frank Sinatra. The bar is to make the lyric as definitively personal as you can. My first song that I sang for Sarah was If I Love Again. And I was 19. And when I finished, she said, that was wonderful, but how dare you? How dare you sing about If I Love Again when you look like you're 19? I actually was 27. But anyway, her point was well taken. It's like, am I the right narrator for the song? It never occurred to me. And that's, again, the sign of a great cabaret artist is they know that the lyrics are their text and they need to be a believable narrator for the words that are coming out of their mouths.
I think that is a perfect segue into our first video clip of the evening.
Oh dear.
And I will say,
I hope I live up to it.
Some guests choose to know. Jeff did not ask me which videos I had, so all of these are surprises for Jeff as we go through this evening. This is the 1990 MAC Awards.
Oh my God.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, will you please welcome Jeff Harnar with Alex Rybeck at the piano.
Now you're here, and now I know just where I'm going. No more doubt or fear. I found my way. Just in time, I found you just in time. Before you came, my time was running low. I was lost. The losing dice were tossed. My bridges all were crossed. Nowhere to go. Now you're here, and now I know just where I'm going. No more doubt or fear. I found my way. For love came just in time. I found you just in time and changed my lonely life. That lovely day. And now I know I found my way just in time. My time was running low. Nowhere to go. Now you're here, and now I know just where I'm going. No more doubt or fear. I found my way. For love came I found you just in time and changed my lonely life, changed my lonely life, changed my lonely life. That lovely day. Just in time.
Yes.
Were you using a director at that time?
I was.
Who were you working
Sarah
with?
Louise Lazarus. Sarah Louise Lazarus. Yes,
Do you think a director is necessary in this art form?
I do. Full stop. I absolutely do. I don't think there's any way that even if I'm on pitch singing, I can be off pitch and tone deaf as a speaker on stage. I need somebody to say, shut up, which Sandra does really well. Or Sarah's version of that is, I just don't love you as much when you say it that way. And I've worked with Barry Kleinborg, who's brilliant and has just such a wonderful sense of dramaturgy. He just really understands a theatrical arc. I absolutely need a third eye out there, someone who is going to affirm that I'm doing right things and guide me toward better choices. The choices I'm making aren't good. And now that I'm a director, that is what I think. I don't even think of myself as a director. I think of myself as a guide. My guide is just to help you get the light that's naturally meant to come through you, just to get as much stuff out of the way so that it's just you're channeling, but yes, I was working with Sarah, and all I can say about that arrangement is so Julie Stein actually he came to our Convent and Green show and he heard me sing that arrangement and he really liked it. He came up to Alex and said, I love your big arrangement of Just in Time, which is really lovely. So cut to 30 years later, we did this show again at Birdland Theater. Cut that song. That arrangement is one that I have outgrown. It's just both Alex and I agree that it's just I just don't need to be that busy anymore or work quite that hard. So Just in Time appeared differently in the revised version of our show.
Well, that brings up an interesting point. As someone now who's been part of this art form for 30 years or more, as you revisit songs, how does your interpretation change?
Oh, it's the greatest gift of all is the gift of time. What a gift to still be working with Sarah and Alex and come back to a show 30 years later and see how these songs fit on me. I just, I feel like I have so much more life to bring to them. My last album that came out was 17 years ago and it was called Dancing in the Dark. And the one that just came out is called I Know Things Now. And there's a reason for that. And I would like to believe that the songs I'm singing now and how I'm singing them now, I could never have sung at any other point. I'm not taking away anything from the other points in my life, but I think it's the great gift of Cabaret, if you do it right, this is a place where wisdom, age, maturity is valued. I mean, this is, Julie Wilson, Marilyn May. Again, the heavens will open. I don't think I would have loved her as much had I discovered her in 1965 on The Tonight Show. I didn't see her on The Tonight Show. I love watching those. Those are fascinating to me, but the entertainer she is now is, Mother Earth. It's just, My point is that if you work it right, I think Cabaret is a great place to just keep evolving and bringing more life to it, more to give.
I was lucky enough to get to meet Miss Wilson and see her perform towards the end of her life, and what she could do with a lyric was unreal.
The amazing, you know, so Donald Smith managed my career when it first took off. He's right there. Hi, Donald. And you know, he was handling Julie Wilson, and what he said to me that I loved is that he said, you know, her whole career in the 1950s was a tomato. You know, she sang sex pop songs in a tight, you know, I think we've all seen the pictures with the gardenia and the hand up here, and she's in these tight dresses. And he said the fact that she continued to evolve into the singing actress that she became is extraordinary. And I liken it, you know, I had this experience working with the McGuire sisters, and their trajectory was to try to recapture what they did. They, you know, and I love Phyllis, and she knows it. I love Dorothy and Christine. I loved them dearly, and they changed my life in profound ways too. But as performers, it was all about recapturing the thing that they did in the 50s. It was not, they were terrified. They, you know, they learned like 3 new songs for their comeback tour. And I ran the teleprompter. And, you know, just the idea of new material, you don't do that, you know. And there's Julie Wilson. I did a two-hander with her when she was 79. They put us together for a night at the Algonquin. And there she was like, let's do duets. Let's make sure there are at least 5 or 6 new duets. And, you know, just learning the lyrics. So, and Marilyn May is like that too. She's my pacer rabbit. We teach at the St. Louis Cabaret Conference. And if she can be up at 9 o'clock looking like that and teach all day and then sing at night, damned if I'm going to complain, you know.
I have a clip that I cut together today.
Uh-oh.
Oh, don't know this. It was as I was researching what videos I wanted to use for tonight. Over the last week, I was having trouble deciding between 2 versions of the same song. And then I realized I didn't need to choose. So one is from the 1989 MAC Awards, and one is from the 2018 MAC Awards.
And I sang the same song?
You sang the same song.
Here I am just talking about artists who don't challenge themselves.
No, but I think it's so interesting to see you in these 2 different points in your life with this same song.
Okay.
This time, there's no time to waste. We know the time we have cannot be replaced. This time, let's not hesitate. We know our time is brief, and it cannot wait. There is a time for spring and for sighing, a time to laugh, a time for crying, a time for dreams and for sweet pretending, and then it seems that suddenly it's ending day. This time, let's not hesitate. We know the time we have cannot be replaced. This time, there's no time to waste. We know our time is brief, and it cannot wait. There is a time for hope and beginning, a time to lose, a time for winning, a time to waste on lazy vacations, a time for haste and beautiful temptations. This time, there's no time to waste. We know the time we have cannot be replaced. This time, let's not hesitate. We know our time is brief and it cannot wait. There is a time of autumn and sadness, a time for youth and love's happy madness, a time take my love, my life, my eager kiss, for time flows on and on and on and on.
That's the meanest thing I've ever seen.
Oh, I'm sorry you feel that way. I so loved watching the two of them together.
That's a interesting study. I'm so glad I see my therapist tomorrow.
Oh
Well, at least the key was the same.
no, the key was the same. Exactly. As you're looking to work with a client as a director, what excites you about working with someone? What are you looking for in a client?
I'm looking for someone with an idea. I am looking for someone who comes to me and says, this is what I love. This is what I'm passionate about. I've got these ideas. I don't know what to do with them. I just worked with Becca Kidwell, and she came to me with this whole dream of what her show could be. I just love that. That's my favorite thing, is when someone really has some sense of who they are, what they want to say, and how I can be part of that team.
Is there anything that makes you say, this isn't going to be a good fit, or not yet, when a client approaches you?
Absolutely. If someone comes to me and says, I don't have any ideas. I don't even really know what I want to say. Can we just, and it's not that it's a bad fit. It's just maybe it's not the time yet. It's, which is not to say I haven't worked with singers from, building from the ground up, where we really had no sense of what the end product would be. You asked particularly what lights my fire, and that's when somebody really has what they want to say and an idea of how they want to say it.
When you're working with a client, what do you view as your primary job?
Guide. And there's a guide. I'm there just to, and it's something that I learned in my 12-step work. We help each other stay sober, and the way the feeling is, I can't keep what I have if I don't give it away. And the way I give it away is by being a guide and saying, this is what worked for me. And I would suggest you try it this way because it works for me. It may not work for you, but this is, and what I love about doing that as a director is I can't make suggestions to people about personalizing their lyrics if I'm not actively doing that myself. I can't make suggestions about trusting the director if I'm not trusting mine. It's been, I could never have been a director at any other point in my life, because I believed before that the director has a vision that they impose on you, and that they tell you what to do. They tell you when it's wrong. They tell you, this here, that there. That's not how I work. I really don't think that that's helpful for this particular kind of art. And everybody's different. Everybody needs a different kind of guide. And some people do need someone to say, cut it out. And Sandra knows that sometimes that's what I need.
When you're working with a newer client, what are the top 3 things you want them to take away that they need to know going into doing a show?
Well, I hope so. There's a wonderful life tool that I have learned. Before I say something, ask if I have the wherewithal to pause. I might have the wherewithal to think, does it need to be said? Does it need to be said by me? Does it need to be said right now? I think as a cabaret performer, the answer has to be yes to that for every song.
Oh, 100%.
This needs to be said. This needs to be said by me, and it needs to be said right now. So it's finding what is that? What is that hour? You know, Alex said to me decades ago, he said, it's asking an awful lot of an audience to give you audience for an hour. I mean, not to me personally, but he was just saying, you know, in general, to ask an audience to pay attention. So there really needs to be a point of view. There needs to be, I need to know, I can usually tell by the second song if I'm in the hands of someone who's going to take care of me. I want the audience to know they can sit back or they can lean in, they can lean in, but that there's going to be a journey here. It's not just 12 of my favorite songs in any order. It's not a playlist.
What do you think about, in guiding clients or you as a performer, about the fact that this is such a live art form, that somebody may drop a fork in the front row and it might change things for you. It might change the evening depending on when it happens. Or ice might get dumped at an inopportune moment and it might change things in the moment, or make you might need to go take your pattern a different way based on how the front row is responding. How do you work with a client through those moments?
Well, it goes back to what Andrea said about there's no replacement for seasoning, you know, just being seasoned with that stuff happening. Yeah, I mean, I handle those things sometimes better than others. It helps that I go and see other performers because I realize sometimes what's distracting for me in the room when I'm in an audience, if the performer plays through it, it's not really, but if a performer draws attention to the fact that, like, I can't sing if you're going to talk, those kind of moments, it usually causes more harm than good. Yeah, I mean, just last night I was singing at Crooners, which is, oh my God, what a place. What a place in Minneapolis, Minnesota. 3 venues under one roof. There were 4 shows that happened in one day. And I just applaud. I mean, every city had crooners, we'd all be, the world would be a better place. I mean, there were so many people there having a ball, going from show to show and whatever. But the point of this was my show wasn't quite after sunset. And I was in a room that had windows. So blackouts weren't really black. The audience was quite visible to me. And so one of the things that Sarah Louise Lazarus teaches the David Craig technique, and some of his languages, songs are either a pin spot to an invisible someone, or they're a house number to everybody. And when I'm singing a pin spot, I pick where that is, and I create my world around who that person is, what's just happened, why I'm singing this, how they're responding to what I'm singing. And it just so happened last night that pin spot became the place where the waitress had to stop and talk to somebody about something in their order. And, you know, I mean, during Send in the Clowns. So, you know, it is what it is. You know, I still enter through the kitchen. I still exit through the kitchen and trying to conjure a little magic. And, you know, there are hiccups along the way.
It sounds like both as a director, as you're guiding people, that also you as a performer, that you really do approach the material from an acting standpoint.
I do. I do, because the very first thing I look at in a song is the lyric. That is my text. So I have to, as I said before, be the reliable, believable narrator of this text. You know, the first theme show that I did, after that performance of This Time, I won a MAC award that year. And so I thought to myself, the next time I do a show, maybe more people will come. So I want to do something special. So I'm going to hire a director, I'm going to hire a publicist, and I'm going to have a theme. And I want the theme to convey that the show is fun. So what can I do that just says fun? And I just thought the lyrics of Common Agree. The lyrics of Common Agree. I mean, that's just, their shows are just, you know, dazzlingly funny. And as a singer, if you pick witty lyrics, odds are you might look witty. If I pick profound lyrics, the odds are that I might look like I'm birthing these intelligent thoughts, because that is the challenge as a performer. It is as if these songs never existed before and we are birthing thoughts. So that was my first theme show with Sarah and Alex back in 1989. And that show changed my life. I mean, that took me out of doing one night a week at 88's to doing 7 shows a week at the Ballroom for 5 weeks. And who knew that it was going to be Comden and Green's 50th year in show business? I did not know that. So I got swept into a whole bunch of very exciting things with them. And Julie Stein came, and Dolores Gray, and we just it was a really exciting time to be performing, because so many of those songwriters were still there.
And listing those surprises that they're in the audience, who has been that biggest over the years of, I can't believe this person is sitting out there watching me right now?
Well, it's Stephen Sondheim, because that was the one that just, I could never get over it. I mean, there just never came a moment where I forgot that he was there. And someone was recording every performance that KT and I did. That was our first Sondheim show in 2014. And there's nothing usable for me from the night that he came, because my breathing is just, it's just so shallow. Yeah, it was just, well, you were there. I mean, it was just.
I was one of the 2 people allowed to sit behind him.
I mean, I mean, I've had Jerry Berman come, I've had Burton Lane come, I've had, there have been some wonderful people like that in the audience, but there does come a point where, like with Comden and Green, when they came, I was just so excited to share with them what we had come up with. And that's how I thought it was going to be with Sondheim. But it was my first time singing Sondheim. He came to, I think, our 3rd performance. He came.
Yeah, it was early.
He came very early, and I just wasn't ready. It was terrifying to me. But he was kind. He was very kind, and he remained kind till the end. He was an email pen pal, and very encouraging. So I'm forever grateful that I at least had a little, dot on his radar.
Well, let's talk about that journey that started in 2015 with KT and went through the 3 different duo shows, and then brings us to where you are today. How did that first duo show, or really trio with John, come about?
Well, it all goes to KT. I will never forget the day she called me and said, "I'd love to do a duet."
Let me say KT Sullivan, for those of you who are in the room who
Sullivan.
Maybe don't know who we're speaking of. The brilliant KT
the
Sullivan.
Artistic director of the Mabel Mercer Foundation, and just an extraordinary cabaret performer. And we've done lots of duet shows. The first time we ever duet show was in 1991. We got a flyer in the mail that was the Russian Tea Room and who's going to be there, and it said KT Sullivan and Jeff Harnar sing Noel Coward. And I called Donald Smith and I said, "But I don't know Noel Coward." And he said, "But now you will. Now you will." And and right he was. So KT and I performed together a lot, and she called me in 2014 and said, "I'd love to do a duet show with you." And I'm thinking Sondheim. And I was 54, 55 at the time. I had never really sung Sondheim. I'd sung one song here, one song there, but I just left that music for Broadway Voices, which is really where I thought it belonged. But I thought, maybe with her, I would have the courage to do this. And then I started listening to the music. And then I thought, I'm 50, whatever I was, 55. KT, I love you, but I'm not in love with you. So if I'm going to do this, I want to sing the proper pronouns. Mm-hmm. And in singing the proper pronouns, it actually opens up a world of songs to me that were written for women that I would like to sing, like Losing My Mind. Mm-hmm. It's the first one that came to mind. And she said, "I love that idea. I'll do it too." And she sang Joanna. And so we came up with this thing that the New York Times called sex role reversals and Sondheim. Anyway, the point is, KT then said, well, we first asked Alex Rybeck, and he was not available. He passed on that project. So she said, "I'd really like to bring John into it." And I knew John as a jazz piano virtuoso. I knew that he was someone who wasn't going to be able to read my charts, but creating a brand new show together, maybe this was going to open something up new to me. And since I'm opening myself up new to this material, maybe that's right. And then Katie said, I think we should bring Sandra Lee in. And she terrified me. I mean, I've known Sandra Lee's name since I'm 5. I mean, she used to dance into my living room as Tiger Lily every year. I mean, that was appointment television. You know, you were in front of that TV. I don't know if you're old enough to remember that, Michael.
I've seen it. I've seen it.
TV. Well, it used to only be on once a year, and then some years it wasn't on, and it was just terrible. But you know, I've known the name Sandra Lee since I knew show business names, and the thought of her directing, you know, and Sandra, to know her for 5 minutes is to know she doesn't suffer fools. I mean, she really, you know, she calls it as she's enormous joy and zest. And I mean, I wish I walked into the room the way she does. Oh, when we were recording the album, she just walked in. She goes, "This is fantastic. We usually record in toilets." I love this place. Every person is wonderful. I mean, she just says this, you know, when it's good, it's good. And when there's work to be done, there's work to be done. So KT was the nucleus of this constellation. And it, for me, was transformative because Sondheim's lyrics gave me the permission, the courage to come out on stage. It's not that, I mean, you looked at that clip from 1990, it's no big secret, but I was still being very cagey about pronouns and, you know, and certainly not deflecting if any woman wanted to impose a romantic notion on what she was watching. And this show, I really was determined to sing my truth. And KT supported that, and Sandra supported that, and then John opened up, you know, this jazz vocabulary. Alex's arrangements, which, you know, gave me the career that I have had, are compositions, as you heard in that Just in Time arrangement. I mean, that changes time, you know, like 5 times and changes keys like 4 times. And that's what I love. That's what Wally Harper did. That's what Brian Lasser did. It's what I loved. But John, I look at that white wall behind you, and that's how it is starting an arrangement with John. Is I tell him what I think the setting is, what I think the texture is, what I think maybe a feel is, and then he just starts this channeling with these chords, and we find you know, it's really beautiful. So that was a transformational experience for me, and that, you know, that it's come to this point where now I'm doing a complete solo show of Sondheim is you know, incredible to me. And that it then, you know, Ron Thomas came along. Everybody needs a Ron Thomas in their life who, you know, sent me an email and said, I think there's an album here. Every year I endow a creative project as a tax write-off. And I'm thinking there might be an album here. And he hadn't even seen the show. And
Oh, wow.
you know, so that's where I am right now. Right now, this album has just come out 10 days ago, and I'm touring around performing this
You're
show.
touring the world with it. You opened it in London, and
That's true. We did open it in London. That does
you
sound
opened in
fancy.
London.
Yes, we
And
did.
you've been touring the country over the last month or so with it. You've done 2 dates at the Beachman. You've got one this week at the Beachman.
And one day after tomorrow is our closing night of this engagement. Last night I was at Crooners in Minneapolis, and we were at the Purple Room in Palm Springs on the day the album dropped. And yeah, so it's been a very exciting time. And what's really exquisite about this album is that we have 20, as John would say, 21 musicians, because he doubles on some glockenspiel, and he makes them surprise. Anyway, there are 21 musicians, and John has created these orchestrations. As dazzling as I think his piano is, he had these sounds in his head. It's very jazzy. It's very, it's rich. Isn't it rich?
Well, I think it's time to let our participants in the room see a little preview of the album.
Oh.
Careful the things you say, children will listen. Careful the things you do, children will see. learn. Everybody says don't, everybody says don't, everybody says don't get out of line. When they say that then, buddy, that's a sign. 9 times out of 10, buddy, you are doing just fine. Loving you is why I do the things I do. Loving you is not in my control, but loving you, I have a goal for what's left of my life. I will live and I would die. Pardon me, is everybody there? Because if everybody's there, I want to thank you all for coming to the wedding. I'd appreciate you going even more. I mean, you must have lots of better things to do, and not a word of it to Paul. Remember, Paul, you know the man I'm going to marry, but I'm not, because I wouldn't ruin anyone as wonderful as he is. But I thank you all for the gifts and the flowers. Thank you all. Now it's back to the showers. Don't tell Paul, but I'm not getting married today. Kept a shop in London town, of fancy clients and good renown. And what if none of their souls were saved? They went to their maker impeccably shaved by Sweeney. By Sweeney Todd. I dim the lights and think about you. Spend sleepless nights to think about you. You said you loved me, or were you just being kind?
So it makes me very happy to look at that, just because it was such a happy time. Just, you know, we still were masking and COVID protocol, and the world was still quiet. This was back in February. We started on what would have been Mom's birthday, recording in the studio, and that cocoon of being in that studio with this brilliant man, Bart McGowan, was his 13 Grammy nominations for his Sondheim albums. It just was so joyful that once I got every song, at least a rough track down, I was just like, okay, if I die now, it's there, it exists. It happened. You know, it happened. So
it's such a glorious listen, beginning to end, Jeff. I've listened to it all the way through multiple times now. It's a glorious listen. Everyone in the room, if you have not purchased it or streamed it yet, I highly recommend it. It's I Know Things Now, My Life in Sondheim's Words.
And one of Sandra's directives was, you know, I took her to see the movie West Side Story, and she said, you know, did I like it? I admired it, but I thought it would never shut up. You know, she just wants things to, you know, she's like, the audience is so smart. They're so smart just to get there. So there's no pattern in the show. It's just once I say hello to the audience and I say the words and music are Stephen Sondheim, but the story is mine. And from that moment on, it's his lyrics, because there's nothing I can say that's going to mean more, be deeper, be funnier. There's nothing more that I can say. And it challenged me to make sure that every lyric that's coming out of my mouth is that personal. I'm really trying to tell my story, different chapters of my life, through these particular lyrics that I've chosen. So when you listen to the album, you are listening to the actual show. That's how it plays. The musicians that are really having fun playing it, because they've never played a show where once I say hello to the audience, they're playing the whole time. You know, there's no, you know, cut through this to get to the next song. It's just they're on. They're wonderful. I'm working with great guys at the Laurie Beach.
Who are, in this day and age, the performers in this art form that you think exemplify the art form, or people who excite you, people that you would maybe say, oh, you want to see what Cabaret is, go see this person?
It's so tricky because I know they're cabaret performers watching, and I don't want to not say anybody. But I think as far as, you know, what an entertainment can be in a nightclub, you need to see Marilyn May while you can, because that just won't happen again like that. That's just a kind of show business. I think waiting in the wings is Marta Sanders, who is, as you know, galvanizing a talent that can just grab a room by the throat and have you laughing 1 minute and crying 1 minute. And, you know, she's just a seismic talent. There are so many that cast the spell for me. It's really hard for me. I can't do it.
I won't force you. We can have a longer conversation when we're not being recorded.
Well,
over that.
It's just so hard to say, because anyone who can, you know, I will say that as a director, whatever that part of my brain is, when I see a show where that goes quiet and my heart, it connects. There are performers who, and they may not be household names. I think some of the best shows you can see are at Don't Tell Mama, frankly, because there are people who are getting up there because of the art. It's not, they're not charging $90 a ticket. They're not worried about the money infrastructure. They're just trying to get up because they have a calling. Your show, my young friend, is an example of somebody who knows who he is, gets up there, takes an audience. I absolutely knew that I was in good hands. I knew, was it Lenny who directed you?
Jay Rogers.
Jay Rogers, Tanya Moberly. Let's go through the list of Lenny Watts.
Lena.
There are just Lena Katrakis. There are so many great directors right now. And I've already mentioned Gary and Sandra and Sarah. But your show was beautifully directed, and what I want to see is a person's rainbow. I want to see all the colors on your palette, hopefully not repeating any colors, hopefully with some left turns and surprises, and you had them. I mean, that's just delightfully entertaining for me.
Thank you for including me in that.
That was a Don't Tell Mama, and that, you know, that's so affordable, so accessible. Got to speak to you right after the show. There you were, waiting to take a selfie with me. I mean, to me, a New York night like that is pretty damn special. I have taken people out of towners to see shows, and they're just like, what? first of all, it's only an hour, and you can have food and drink, and you can meet the entertainer, and you know, it's pretty magical. And as Mary Claire Herron used to say, on a very core level, the idea of a mother singing a lullaby to a child, the idea of being sung to, there's just something very primal about what can happen. And those people that can cast that spell are out there, and some of them for very affordable cover charges.
You, of course, this year are hosting a night of the Cabaret Convention, as you always do. What night are you doing? What is the theme of your evening of the Cabaret Convention?
Andrea Markovici and I are co-hosting for the 9th time. And we are co-hosting opening night, which is October 26th. I don't even know what day of the week that is. Is that Tuesday or Wednesday? It's one of those.
It's one of those.
One of those. I'm on pandemic time. I don't know. But we'll be there. It's at 6 o'clock, and the evening is all the lyrics of Yip. No, it's not all the lyrics of it, but the theme is Yip Harbor. And we have a wonderful cast. This cast was actually in place back in 2019. Okay. And then, you know, we got shut down because of the pandemic. And then last year was the one night Irving Berlin night. So so this group of people have patiently waited for this turn. And Andre and I love doing it. It's a great honor to be charged with cultivating or curating a night and trying to give everyone that shot. You know, it's a great opportunity.
what else is coming up for you? I know you have a Birdland show coming up. Make sure to tell the participants about that.
Yes, I believe that's Monday, November 7th. We'll be doing our Cy Coleman show, which we did back in January. We're going to do an encore performance of that. And that's, again, I'm doing my own personal encore series. This is a show that Sarah and Alex and I did back in 2006. And so I don't know how many years that is, but that's a lot of years. And this is a show that coming back to, I first sang it in my 40s and now I'm in my 60s. And I just love these lyrics now at this point in my life. It's just a meal of a show. I love the lyricists that Cy Coleman got to work with.
Well, I can't believe I have to say this, but it is time for my last question. And then we'll have one last video clip, and then we will invite our audience to ask some questions. And before I ask mine, I will say, if you have a question and you don't want to ask it yourself, you can put it in the chat function here on Zoom, and I can read those afterwards as well. Jeff, every one of these Cabaret conversations, and you are the first of our third year, you're kicking off year 3, every one of them has ended with the exact same question. In a couple of sentences, a couple of words, what is Cabaret?
Intimacy. That's my immediate answer. I'm going to say the illusion of intimacy, because I do think Cabaret can happen at Rose Hall, where the Cabaret convention will be. There are artists who can create the illusion of intimacy, even in a space that big. But to me, intimacy into me, you see. It's that wonderful piece of magic that feels like someone is actually, that it matters you're in the room, because it does. As Marilyn May says, the most important person in the room is the audience, not the performer. And that's a really good, humbling shifting of the paradigm. But yeah, that's what Cabaret is to me. It is the intimacy.
It's a great answer. The clip I have chosen to end with tonight is not a clip of you in a club. This is a clip that I revisited so many times in the dark years when we were closed down. It is a video that you and KT and John released on March 17th of 2020. And I wept that first day, and I cried many times watching it. And I couldn't let tonight go by without sharing this video with our audience.
Twilight descends, everything ends till tomorrow. Tomorrow, since we must part, here is my heart till tomorrow. Tomorrow, clouds drifting by echo a sigh. Parting is such sweet sorrow. I'm drifting too, dreaming of you till tomorrow comes. The sun will come out tomorrow. Bet your bottom dollar that tomorrow there'll be sun. Just thinking about tomorrow clears away the cobwebs and the sorrow. When I'm stuck with a day that's gray and lonely I just stick out my chin and grin and say, oh, the sun'll come tomorrow, hang on till tomorrow. Come what may, tomorrow, tomorrow, I love you, tomorrow, you're always a day away. Tomorrow, tomorrow, I love you, tomorrow, you're always a day away. Twilight descends, everything ends till tomorrow. Tomorrow comes.
First of all, we didn't know the very next day the lockdown would begin.
Yeah.
And second of all, looking at that now, KT has lost her husband since then, and her apartment doesn't look like that anymore. Her piano is gone, and a lot of that furniture is gone. So that really is, that's a very astonishing piece of footage for me to look at.
Jeff, it has been an absolute honor to have you be part of this series tonight.
Thank
To
you.
get your perspective and stories of this art form recorded, and to be able to share them with our audience tonight and those who will watch this in the future. So thank you, thank you, thank you for being part of the series.
Thank you, Michael.
I'm going to invite our audience to turn on your cameras if you would like. You can wave your
I
hands.
know that
If you have a
Sandra's out there
question,
saying, Sandra's saying, I thought he'd never shut up.
wave your hand if you have a question, and I will invite you to unmute, and I will spotlight you to join us. Meg, I will spotlight you first. Go ahead and unmute.
Oh, you two beautiful men. You two beautiful artists. So Jeff, I'm going to ask a technical question. Because even way back when, even when we were students together, you seemed fearless with your voice. You never even were thinking about hitting the note, supporting the note, whether you had a cold, whether you had jet lag, whether you had proper rehearsal with the band, whether there was dust in the cabaret. A, is that true? And B, how did you get there to navigate the fact that it is a vocal instrument while being intimate?
Oh, wow. I'm just like the last person to ask about that, because I'm just hanging on by a thread. There's not a real science to it for me. What I will say is just over time, my singing is just more and more conversational. That's, people ask me if I'm studying. I should be studying. I'm not. I think every time I'm working with a musical director, I'm studying. But, and certainly when there are issues, it's one of the reasons I love Alex Rybeck, because he knows exactly what my quote unquote money notes are. He knows I can name a song and he knows what key it needs to be in. He's, that's the kind of musical partner you want to find. So I'm grateful that for me, cabaret singing is, Johnny Mathis said, the microphone, it's like singing into someone's ear. So, as time has gone by, it's more and more intimate, my singing. It's not as taxing for me. Alex's arrangements were very big, and we have, they have, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I've got.
Well, I guess sort of the compliment is I see you do a lot of brave singing vocally as well as emotionally. And I never see the eyes change. Here comes the note, here comes the note, here comes the note.
Oh,
You stay in the song and then the voice follows. And we all know this, but you do this. So,
yeah,
it's
that's something
fascinating.
actually, even back at NYU, as Meg and I were together at NYU, I was very aware of the singers who had technique. And in our song, like with Valentine Ryder, we studied song interpretation. I could see the singers who were really worried about placement. And, I could see their musculature change because they'd be bracing for or anticipating or placing or lifting a palette or whatever. And that's all great to do in a voice class. But once I'm performing, I can't be thinking about that. Which, I see Ari Axelrod is watching, and he's just got one of the most extraordinary God-given instruments on the planet. Mine's not that. I'm a conversational singer. And yeah, that's really, that's how I feel it. And it needs to be that way because it's not, it needs to be something I can recreate night after
Right.
night. It has to be manageable for me. So I'm not a heroic singer much. Those moments are few in the show, and they're paced well. There is definitely. I mean, Alex is all very much like let's not work that hard for the opening. Let's I mean, we are aware of where those moments are, but the last thing I want is for people to be going, oh wow, he has got a nice voice. I'm hoping that what they're hearing is the message in the lyric. Julie Wilson's the best teacher, but she actually was a really gorgeous singer. So many reviews say, oh, she doesn't have a note in her head, but she really had. Well, she had an extraordinary singing instrument, but it's the words that you remember. It's like that saying, you don't remember what people said, you just remember how they made you feel. That was Julie.
Thank
I
you.
don't know, Meg, if I'm not sure. It's good
You
to see
answered the question.
my old friend.
And our next question is, you invoked his name and he has raised his hand, so he can be next. Ari, I'm going to add you spotlight. Go ahead and unmute.
Be gentle. Hi, Leo.
Well,
Aw.
first of all, wait, have I?
Yeah,
Well,
we can hear you.
anyway.
We can hear you.
Look at that dog.
Oh, this is my dog. They're the co-presidents of the Jeff Harnar fan club. So if anyone disagrees, you have stiff competition to fight for. First of all, this is a comment and then I have a follow-up question, but the comment is, I think, in addition to your glorious voice and your glorious storytelling, Jeff, I think one of the greatest gifts that you offer to the world of cabaret not only is your wealth of Yiddish words that you know, which I say because you'll know what I'm saying. You are, if you look up mensch in the dictionary, there's your face, and I just want it to be known on the record that to have you in this community is one of the greatest gifts that I think exists in the history books of cabaret, is that Jeff Harnar is a part of our community. So that's the statement. The question that I have for both you and Michael, what is your wish for cabaret as an art form, as a community? What is your wish for cabaret in the next 10 years? Your impossible dream, your dream of dreams. What is it that you blow out the candles, Robert? What are you wishing for this art form that you both have had such a hand in cultivating what it's become?
Well, I'm just going to leapfrog off of what I said about crooners last night. The man, Andrew Wallish, who is the artistic director there. So there are 3 rooms. So it's comparable to when Del Tomama had 3 venues going. His belief is that if one show doesn't get its audience, it will amortize out by having 3. So, my wish is that I'm Donald. Donald used to say, if you singers could just have a room, that's how he'd say, if you just have a room, why can't it be Julie Wilson every Tuesday night forever? Why can't it be, I just wish that we all had a place to be, so that someone like me when I was 16 and could see that Barbara Cook was at Reno Sweeney's, people should know they could come, and Ari Axelrod's going to be at the Green Room every Friday for a season, whatever that is, in a way that's sustainable for us as artists to, make a living at it. So yeah, I do think I love this article in the New York Times 2 weeks ago. It was about the 10th anniversary of 54 Below. And it talked about what the cabaret scene was like when 54 Below opened and what it's like now. And there's no denying that it's just vibrant, 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 people going out, all these rooms are percolating out. If we keep going that way, that's fantastic. My issue is, though, it's so many people doing one night where the rooms are counting on you to bring your 100 friends, and then goodbye. Now the next person, you bring your 100 friends. I just would love to see the rooms do kind of what they used to do, which is, what if they picked 5 singers and gave each one of us a night of the week, and for a month season, you could, hear Lori Krause, I think, is in that audience. Lori Krause every Friday night, and that you would just know that that's her room. Nancy Tipponero used to do an 11 o'clock show at 88's every Friday night forever, and you just knew she'd be there. And she'd walk out on stage and go, "Oh my God, it's a full house! I would have shampooed." I had no idea,
And I think my
But
answer
that's what you want.
my answer would piggyback off of Jeff's in that maybe return to the old business model, but also I would love our art form to gain the respect it used to have back, where the press would actually cover us.
The press.
And the press covering us more than just press that is only for us. Backstage doesn't cover us anymore. The Times rarely covers us anymore. So if you're coming in from out of town, you don't know to go to a cabaret room. There's great writers out there. Stephen Mosier is doing amazing work with Broadway World for the cabaret community, but it's mostly just for us. It's us reading what he's putting out there. So somehow finding that way back in, and Adam Feldman is trying to do some stuff with Time Out to bring cabaret press back into what he can, as his title has changed there. But I think it's finding that way to gain the respect of the press again, which will then publicize the art form. So maybe allow us to return to that old business model.
A side note, just about, coming up with a good idea. So I'm working with Josephine Sanchez, who, is extraordinary. And she had this idea of singing the songs that made Fanny Bryce famous, including the songs that we associate with Fanny Bryce, like the ones from Funny Girl and Funny Lady. And so Stephen Mosier wrote an article about this show, and it was the most read article. And he would have to tell you the superlative about it, or the hyperbole about it, but she got like 400,000 hits because it was an idea whose time had come, and the audience, wanted to hear about what is this? What would it be like to see it? It just, so that's part of it's on us as writing something that demands attention, coming up with, like Maggie, like your idea. It's I just love that show.
We have time for another question or two before we wrap up. If somebody wants to raise their hand in Zoom or type a question in.
I just want to say hi to Stephen. Stephen, where are you watching from? Which time zone are you in?
I'm in the Pacific time zone. I'm in Seattle, far away from the cabaret world.
Well, I'm glad that Zoom, that's one of the miracles of Zoom. It's good to see you.
Likewise, very much.
One question has come in through the chat. Jeff, what do you think the biggest change to the cabaret world has been in your decades as a part of it?
Well, I mean, you've just mentioned that thing about the press. So I was very fortunate that I got lucky at a time when the New York Times covered shows, and I had runs that went, for a month. So that is, for me personally, the biggest change is that that's not here anymore. I wish that my Sondheim show could get a New York Times review. I wish that the album could get that kind of coverage. The flip side, though, we didn't have Facebook, we didn't have Instagram, we didn't have, so the social media, that thing about being accessible to your audience, that's a whole new world now. Stephen Bogart, hello. I mean, it used to be that he would come to town once in a while and see a show, and I don't even know how, I guess it was my website, but now we can actually see each other in real time, on these platforms. So I used to have to, address and mail out hundreds of postcards, flyers, and now, that with the flick of social media, we can, that's a lovely thing. But for me personally, that's I'm very grateful and lucky that I started at a time where that still was happening. And there was a man named Stephen Holden with the New York Times, and I mean, he single-handedly gave me the credentials that got me out of working at Mrs. Shea Sacred Cow. Once he wrote his review, I never waited on tables again. I mean, I got booked. The New York Times was very, I don't know if it still carries that kind of power, but for a cabaret singer, it sure does. It was astonishing. I mean, I used to go, at 2 a.m. to when the New York Times building, the bundle would come off, because we thought our review would be in the next day. And we'd read these reviews. I mean, it was, and it was a Wednesday night, and you still had your Thursday, Friday, Saturday shows, and there'd been no reservations, and now all of a sudden it's full. And, it was very exciting. I miss that.
I think we all do. Even those of us who weren't here for it miss that. Jeff, again, it has been an absolute honor to have you here. A couple of housekeeping bits from the 92Y School of Music. Normally I announce the next 3 guests when we're at the end of a subscription. We're still waiting on approval to announce one of them, but I can announce a couple. Next month I will be joined by Leroy Reams. August is our to be announced. Expect that hopefully by the end of the week. And then in September, I will be joined by Carolyn Montgomery.
Oh.
Which I'm thrilled that, the executive director of the American Songbook Association. So please sign up for those. If you have missed a Cabaret Conversations previously, all of the previous episodes are available for purchase, so you can watch them on the 92Y's website, the same website where you registered for tonight. You can go and catch any of the previous editions of the series. Again, my most sincere thanks to Jeff Harnar. It is an honor to call you a colleague and a friend, and it's so wonderful to hear your stories tonight. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody, for being here. Have a great night.